Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about what makes a great product manager. And I have with me Anja Malesevic, who is a senior product manager at JobDiva and also a good friend of mine who we attended Columbia University together. So I'm excited to bring her on the channel and hear all her insights and feedback for aspiring product managers or people who are already in a PM role. How do you grow in your role and what are the secrets to being a great product manager? Some of the tips we're going to talk about include managing scope, managing time, as well as managing influence across teams. So let's get started. All right, Anya, I'm going to give you a quick intro, but I would love to hear about yourself. I know you're a senior product manager at JobDiva. You studied psychology at Columbia University in undergrad, but give us a little bit more detail on your journey to being where you are as a senior product manager.
Hi, Michael. First of all, thank you very much for leading such a great channel and for sharing insights with other people. I'm pretty sure it's going to help a lot of people. And thank you for having me today. I'm very excited about all the topics that we'll talk about. Yes, so my name is Anja. I work as a senior product manager with company JobDiva. JobDiva is headquartered in New York City, and it is building software for recruiting and a staffing industry. I've been with this company for 6.5 years, and I'm mainly working on AI products, building chatbots. So we're modernizing all the processes in recruiting and staffing industry, and that's kind of the main scope of my work. Before getting this job, I was I was studying at Columbia University. My major was psychology. And after that, I did my master's degree at Imperial College Business School in London, where I studied strategic marketing.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm very impressed with your background coming from psychology perspective. I'm super interested to hear your take on how that actually applies to your work. And you touched on some of like the key skills that you're bringing in. It's super interesting. Maybe we'll dive into that towards the end of the conversation. Another thing really impressive about your resume is your ability to grow in your product manager career. In 6.5 years, you've gone from associate PM to PM all the way to senior product manager. So that is very impressive. And I think people in the audience are going to be very interested to hear maybe your tips on how to do that. So yeah, we'll discuss that towards the end. But the core topic of today is really what makes a great product manager. Obviously, given that you've grown in your career, I think you've seen some great product managers at JobDiva, and you yourself are one. So I'm excited to talk about the three things, which are managing scope, time, and influence. So do you want to kick us off with what managing scope looks like for a great product manager?
Of course, yes. Yeah, that's one of the main skills that a good product manager should have that I've witnessed and I've seen how it works. And that's actually having balance in decision making. What do I mean by
Mhm.
that? I mean that when you are prioritizing and scoping and making trade-offs in your work, and that's happening all the time. That's what the product management is revolving around. This is where you have to be balanced. Um, for example, if you're a very young product manager, usually what's going to happen, you're going to rush and you will want to include as many features and functionalities as possible in your product to get launched. But
Mhm.
it's not really possible because here you have time that goes into the equation, and the more time passes, the less time you have to get real data from customers. If you scope too small and you just want to create a MVP and get it into the production, sometimes you might be lacking certain functionalities that people really need, and they are not going to like your product, and you'll get poor feedback maybe for the product that really has high potential, right? On the other hand, if you are taking too much time to build too many functionalities to have like a perfect product, you're losing time. Maybe your competitors are going to get it before you, and so that has disadvantages on its own. So this is where you come into play, and you need to know, okay, this feature we are going to work on, the other one we are going to postpone. This is like lower priority, and yes, if you have balance with that, you can be very successful.
I love that. So, in a sense, you need to have strong conviction or opinion on the scope of the feature or product and prioritize what comes in the next maybe quarter versus long term 18 months. How do you practically do that? How do you communicate those things to your engineers or UX designers? Um, and then, yeah, I'll start there with those teams. How do you usually communicate what the real MVP is versus what the larger vision or bigger product is going to look like?
It usually goes with the roadmap, and the team should be on board with everything. And you're usually having meetings with all of these teams, and you want to keep them engaged as much as possible. They should know where we are going all the time, so nothing should be just a secret or something that you're working on your own and not sharing with others. That's not happening. So the more um, open you are about your work and your goals, and the path that you're taking with the theme, the better you get and the better the whole team gets. So
Yeah.
it's we're just sharing with them, updating them, showing the roadmap, having check-in meetings, uh, just keeping everyone on the track.
And the other side of this is, why is it so important to narrow down the scope to a real MVP? And what's the, I guess, negative consequence of not doing this? What's the ultimate reason someone should really do this? Because in the future, they might regret if they don't really have a clear, narrowed scope of the MVP.
Well, they might regret because they might build a product that people don't love, and
Mm.
that could be a tragedy, because you've spent time, resources, a lot of effort, and you've built something that is good, but is not really touching your target audience. And then because you didn't get the feedback early on, you didn't get like an MVP that people were sharing feedback with you and about this MVP, and you couldn't improve it and you couldn't drive it in the right direction. And and that then goes into the whole bigger picture where your company is, where it's standing in the market and everything, if you're um, just behind the competition.
Yeah, it becomes wasted resources. Like you're saying, like you're gonna spend a year on something that no one actually really loved or wanted. You could have optimized that to maybe build three separate MVPs and test out which one is more interesting for users. But like I think this point really resonates because I've been in so many meetings where we've everyone has very strong opinions about what the MVP should be. Right, like you're in a meeting with engineering, product, maybe data teams, depending on what kind of product you're serving. Maybe there's internal stakeholders who use the product. They just have an opinion, have had experience, and then you're coming in with your own ideas of like what customers have told you and your discussions with those customers. So how do you manage those discussions where so many different people have opinions on what scope should be, and it could take time if you continue to sort of bounce around ideas and you're not really leading the conversation. I've seen it just take time and ultimately delay product. So, like, do you have any tips for people who should be able to manage this better? Like, how should they do that?
Manage multiple stakeholders. That's the question, right?
Yeah, especially when it comes to building an MVP and when people have such strong opinions about what that scope should look like, and you're the PM in the room. Like, how do you deal with this?
It's usually the key to everything is having a lot of empathy and patience when it comes to just you have to hear out everyone, obviously, to give them time to hear their opinions, but then in the end you're the one who has to carve a path out of everything. It can get a bit overwhelming with a lot of opinions, but I think the the main key to solving this, to getting through this situation, is data, because
Mhm.
data is your best friend. The sooner you get the data about your product, and which is showing you certain trends, showing you either likes or dislikes about your product, I think you're on a good track, and you can explain your decisions and you can make decisions better. So I think
Yeah,
getting to data as fast as possible is the best way.
I love that tip. I think we tend to forget that a lot. When you're in the job, you rely on your intuition or ideas, and you forget like there's a lot of data you should be looking at that could probably shorten those discussions. And people can't disagree with you if you have like good data, right? Um,
Ex-
that's a good point. So this sort of leads us to managing influence. So maybe we can start covering this one, and then we can discuss managing time at the end. Um, so when it comes to managing influence, we're touching a little bit on empathy and understanding where people are coming from. And I am 100% sure your psychology major is going to be very helpful and has been helpful so far. So yeah, how should product managers deal with cross team collaboration and making sure that you have influence on stakeholders?
Number one with this is building your credibility. That is very important because you want other people to respect you and to trust your work. So the faster you have your credibility, the easier it will be for you to collaborate with everyone. That's kind of a core of good collaboration, I think. But besides that, there are many other things that are also completing this picture, which is, as we mentioned, empathy, and just knowing to communicate in the same language with every single team, because you are working with support team, you're collaborating with marketing team, with engineers, designers, with senior management. So there are many and clients in everyone. So you have to have different language with everyone, and you make sure to communicate well with them first of all. And I think you you need to have this the ability to influence without the authority. uh, and that's what usually happens, because in the end this is a team sport. We're all working on the same product, so the engineers are building it, designers designing, we're kind of putting all the people, or managers are trying to get everyone together and get the product going. But then the marketing team, for example, is going to work on marketing campaign, which in the end, so your product is built, but then the marketing campaign is playing a very important role. So you kind of, as product management manager, you want to be to influence the marketing campaign, but that's out of your scope. So now you have to have a really good relationship with marketing team. They have to understand you, they have to understand from where you're coming, how you see this product, and how people interact with it. So you really have to paint that picture for them so that they can market it in the way it might be better. So that's, for example, a way you can influence, for example, something that is out of your scope. And that's just one example.
Yeah, I think that the power of empathy is so underemphasized, and I'm happy you're calling it out. I think some product managers think that they need to be like somewhat of a dictator to get things done, or powered through the relationships and be this person that everyone has to follow. When in reality, that there's nothing more discouraging than someone like that to work with. So if you want people to come with you, you like you're saying, you have to speak their language, you have to do so much. And I think product managers, we don't talk about that enough. Like that's such an important skill.
Yes, and I want to add one more thing, which is active listening. Actively listening to these people and understanding that that's their work and that's something that they feel proud of, and that you cannot really intervene with that, and that it is just going to help your product, but you need to work together. So if you listen to them, listen to their needs and understand them, and also are very respectful, and always, I think it's very good to use we pronoun instead of I, because we are all together working to for something that is a common goal for all of us, right? So if you do that, I think it's the work together is way easier and better and more productive.
That's such a good tip. I'm gonna actively try to use that and avoid the I versus we. But those small things matter, and they add up. So I like that practical tip. Go out there and use we instead of I in those meetings.
Yes.
Love it. And the third part, so we're going to talk about managing your time in order to be a successful, amazing product manager. And this is one I think I struggle with the most. I think I find myself trying to sometimes do the easiest task, right? Get it off my list, get it done. In reality, there's probably something that is like 10 times more important that I should do first. Or just, managing my schedule better. So, what are your tips there? How should product managers manage their own time?
That, yes, that's again, I think takes us to word balance, which is, I think my career really revolves around word balance, and I can't emphasize how important it is, because if you have it in it goes into multiple spheres of your work, right? With time management, it's usually what happens is the product manager has multiple products, and then for each one of them, there are different spheres of, like different domains of your influence and work, right? And your responsibilities. Yeah, responsibilities is a better word. So you have to work on strategy, you have to work with engineers and designers, you have to do project management, you have to do customer research, and sometimes people are doing recruiting. I'm personally not doing it, but that's that's another thing that does take time. So what happens is that in practically, and that's something that I've seen usually, uh, project management takes a lot of time, because you're communicating with, let's say, engineers, a QA team, all of that, and um, it's kind of taking you away from other aspects of your work, and it usually takes, I don't know, usually like 50% of your time, right? And it shouldn't take that much, because you should devote, uh, let's say, 20% of your time to strategy. So to avoid being caught up in certain aspects only, and kind of disregard the others, you have to like keep yourself on schedule, to decide, well, for these 30 minutes I'm just working on this, and I'm going to block out all the distractions are happening because people are reaching out, and then they're like bouncing you from topic to topic, from this question to that question. And then, for example, if you started working, let's say, task A, you're looking at the data, someone reached out to you on Teams, they asked you about, I don't know, a bug that happened somewhere, and then you start talking about that, the data, you leave it on, and then it stays for next 2 days because you got caught up in another thing. So to avoid that, just what I've used, and that's something that could work for others, but for me definitely did, a Pomodoro technique, where
Mm.
for 25 minutes, I said, I'm not looking at any messages or anything. I'm just focusing on this. And then for 5 minutes, for next 5 minutes, I'm going to review if there is anything urgent, obviously that's going to take my attention. Uh, but if not, I'm just going to make sure, check on everything, check that everything is fine. And then for next 25 minutes, I'm going into the next task. So, and that's what I said. It has to be balanced between strategy, between work with designers, looking at the data, interviewing customers.
Actually, can you tell me how you learned about this methodology? It seems very interesting, and maybe the audience wants to know about it.
Sure. It actually, I think, at Columbia University, I attended a workshop, and topic of this workshop was time management. And yes, I've been I've been learning about it. Obviously, I wasn't the best at time management, but so this um, professor or instructor, yes, instructor at this course, he said there is a Pomodoro technique where if, for example, and the key to this is that for 25 minutes you're doing, you're focusing on a certain task, and then you're making a 5 minute break, and then 25 minutes. So everything works for like in 30 minutes. Uh, so, but 25 you're actively working, and then 5 you're actually resting and kind of gathering energy for next 25 minutes. And I remember he said, because at Columbia University we have Butler Library, and he said, you know, for 25 minutes sit here, study, and then for next 5 minutes just go make a make a walk, circle around Butler. So that's the
I'm gonna start walking around the office and doing this, because 25 minutes is just the perfect length where I feel like I can really focus and actually get something done. Whereas when I block off an hour, I think mentally I'm like discouraged. So I'm like, I'll work maybe 30 minutes and then get distracted, answer a message about a bug or something, and then come back, and then I never come back because something new pops up. So 25 minutes seems ideal. So that's a good tip for those who feel like they're struggling with managing time. Cool. So we've covered all three: influence, time, and scope. But I know there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about because the psychology side of your background is so fascinating, and I think it's rare that you meet a product manager who comes with that background. If you can tell me, what are some practical ways where you've seen your psychology major and background actually help you in your role now?
Yeah, psychology actually is quite underrated in product management. Usually, people are, you know, coming from computer science background, and I haven't actually met a lot of people from psychology. But in fact, it is very, very helpful. Um, for example, I was taking classes which were, and that's a great thing about studying at US universities, where even in a major you can choose your own path, right? So for example, if you're studying psychology, which was my case, um, I didn't have to take courses on like abnormal psychology, which wasn't of my interest. I couldn't see myself in it, for example, or clinical psychology, right? I was always interested in business side of psychology, and I was taking that path, choosing these classes, actively choosing classes that are going to teach me that. And
And for those who might not know abnormal versus clinical, like myself, give us one sentence description of those two.
yeah, so for like clinical psychology, usually like some issues uh, in human psychology, solving the issues, right? Problems that people have. And I couldn't see myself in that career. I saw myself in this business side of psychology, which was marketing, which was getting to the customer, understanding the decisions and main drive for certain decisions, and then motivation, pro-social behavior, for example, and cultural psychology. And I was even taking a class in Columbia Business School, Consumer Insights, and that's the class that taught me most. And unfortunately, before that, I was biased towards marketing in general. I was thinking that not a lot of work is being done, and it's just posting content on social media. But then when I took this class, I understood how much research and how much serious work has been done in the field, and how detailed people are when they're, you know, launching a marketing campaign. You know, they're tracking pupils, they're you know, taking cultures into consideration. So they have one kind of advertising for Western cultures versus different for Eastern cultures. So many things that you can learn about in psychology. And I think earlier I mentioned also active listening. That's something that you really need to master, and you're going to use it in product management. Um, yeah, many things. And this usually is these skills that you build as and that you learn through psychology. You're going to use them in collaboration, you're going to use them in customer research, in interviewing people, in conducting surveys, It is very important to have this knowledge and to understand people, you know. Also, when you're looking at the data and you're analyzing kind of the data, you need to understand what these people, at least like you have to think what were they thinking, what were they feeling when they were using my product, right? um,
Mm.
and once you understand that, you're on a better way to improve your product, because you kind of you're putting yourself in the shoes of your customers. And I think that's something that I learned through psychology. I'm always trying to think like them, think like someone else, trying to understand them best possible.
That's probably the gap where uh, data can't fill, that psychology and user behavior and really like the human side of understanding someone, where they're coming from, that you could fill and address. So that's so interesting. So you mentioned that you're trying to understand and put yourself in the shoes of the user. Um, but practically, how does that look like? Is there ways that we can actually do that and we can practice this every day?
that's a that's a good question. um, well, I think yes. I yes, it's possible. We can practice it even with our family. You know, you can, yeah, and like people you live with, you try to understand and kind of understand what was the motivation for a certain action, right? um, I don't know if it can, you know, how fast it can the progress can go, and how quickly, you know, it can be implemented in the actual career. Because this way of thinking, that's something that when you're studying psychology, you're kind of primed to always think like that, and you think in terms of research. Okay, well, you know, so let's say customers did that. You're always thinking in terms of hypothesis. You always want to set up certain hypotheses and then test it. You know, is this true? Is this something? Is this really happening? And how can we prove that it's happening? And I think that's also happening in my career. So if I see users doing something, I want to understand why. You know, what kind of what was the drive for that?
Yeah, I like that. So maybe this is going into the A/B testing side of things, where you can set up, yeah, you can set up the scientific methodology of testing hypothesis and seeing if you're right or wrong. The other side of this is maybe having the one-on-one conversations with those users. Do you do that, and does that help fill in the gap that data might not be presenting to you?
Yes, 100%. 100%. That's very important. And that these one-on-one interviews, or whatever we want to call it, like it can, yes, interviews with clients, with users, um, can actually tell you a lot. And usually, um, you know, they also discovers other issues that you didn't know about. And that's, I think that's this discovery of new things and new potential enhancements is very valuable when this with these calls, because something that was hidden to you or you couldn't see through data, you can actually hear from people. And then if you hear it from multiple people, well, that's a real reason to work on something.
Yeah, I love this. um, Especially in startups, I think this is talked about, right? When you're trying to get to product market fit, you should do this, like talk to the user, um, build minimal scope MVP. But at the bigger companies, it's not practiced enough, and you rely on a data team, and you can pull, SQL queries and all this stuff, but you should also go talk to the user. And you probably, like you're saying, if you learn some insight that the data is not showing, you'll stand out as a product manager, and you'll probably impress people, one, because they're like, wow, how did you discover this? And two, you'll build the right product or solution. So I like that call out. So now I think, to wrap it up, I would love to talk about, something that people will ask about quickly when they see your resume, is your quick growth in your career. So in 6.5 years, you've been able to go from associate to PM all the way to senior product manager. So, maybe in a few minutes, if you can give us some tips on, for someone that's looking to grow quickly, what are the things that they should do?
I think learning is very important. Learning and listening is quite important, because um, usually, for example, when when product managers start their positions, they're rushing to do something, to launch products, and they usually would do it without having enough of solid knowledge about the industry, about the product, about the clients. And if you are starting on kind of shaky ground, if you're not on a solid ground when it comes to your knowledge, then the way and the speed at which you're growing in the company is going to be slower. So I think learning and listening is very important, because through listening you can understand and figure out many important things. And I would like to add one more, which is being proactive for sure. Um, Always like creating opportunities, as I said, but which comes from listening again. If you're listening to your customers, you're finding potential gaps that you can fill with your product. You can like build a new product. And so if you're proactive about it, you see, well, okay, this is the area that that we could improve with this product, and you want to manage it product, so you kind of create new opportunities for yourself, new chances for a success.
I think this is a lot of information packed into one episode. So I really appreciate you, Anya. Thank you for coming and sharing your experiences. There's a lot of amazing tips and insights. I know the audience is going to learn a lot. And I want to just really share that I'm very excited to have you here. And for people who might have any questions or want to follow up with you, are you okay with sharing maybe your LinkedIn, or how should they reach out to you?
Sure, definitely they could reach out on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy uh, to reply and help. And I'm really hoping that what we talked about is going to be helpful to people.
Definitely. It was helpful for me. I also learned a lot on the psychology side. I think there's practical tips that you can do. Um, so I'm definitely excited to see how the audience reacts to these tips, and it's definitely going to help people. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it was my pleasure.
Awesome. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.